welcome to Pedalboard Building Day. It's been a long time since I have updated my board, and I have a few projects happening, which I'm delighted to say I'm actually going to be getting out and playing some, which will be really fun. I'm really looking forward to it. One thing I want to say from the start is that quite a few of you have said to me, why don't you mention GigRig stuff more on the channel? The reason being, this is that pedal show, and I don't want to make it about the GigRig. GigRig has its own channel, and we do a lot of very GigRig-centric stuff there. But today, I am going to talk about some of the products that GigRig makes. For all of you that don't know, I do own the GigRig. It's my company. But I am going to give you a warning when there is going to be a shameless plug.
Shameless GigRig plug.
Okay, let's have a look at the pedals, and I'll tell you exactly why I've chosen each one. The first pedal in the signal path is my wonderful old Keeley Java Boost. I bought this alongside, let's see, where is it? It is here somewhere. I know it is. Here it is. So this is my old CE2 that I had the Keeley mod done to. It sounds amazing. And also my old Blues driver, which Robert did the mod to, which is currently on Andy Timmons' board. I think this is the first treble booster I ever bought back in the early 2000s. And this particular Java Boost is very interesting. When I showed it to Robert, he said, "Oh, quick, take the back off and see if I signed it." So I'll quickly show you this. So here we go. So this treble booster has an old Mullet OC44 transistor in there, and it sounds beautiful. And this, what I love about this treble booster, not only do you have a level control, but you also have a tone control. You know, you can determine exactly how bright it gets, and a 3-position switch. The middle position is the original treble booster, the Range Master. On the left is fully open, so it lets a lot more bottom end in. And the middle position where I have it is where it allows just enough bottom end so it doesn't sound weedy. So one of the things about treble boosters that I love is that, I mean, traditionally we think of a treble booster going into cranked amplifiers, but going into overdrive pedals, treble boosters are amazing. They tighten up the bottom end and give you a really wonderful solo boost. The other thing is you don't have to crank the output of the treble booster into your next gain stage. You can just, you know, I think traditionally we're so used to going like that into a cranked amp, and of course it sounds amazing, but I just give it a little, just enough of a push so that you can, you know, hear it do its loveliness. So anyway, that is the first in the chain. Right, the next in the chain is my fuzz. This is a fuzz pedal from DevTech Audio. I discovered this earlier this year at the guitar show in Birmingham. Joe Halliday from Hello Sailor Effects, he dropped this off and said, "Oh, you know, this isn't really my thing, but I think you might like it." It's the DSOTM, which stands for Dark Side of the Moon. Normally, I'm not a massive fan of pedals that say, use this and you'll sound like X. This really isn't that. This is more of a homage to the tones from the Dark Side of the Moon, but I plugged it in and I just loved it. You've got your volume and fuzz, but then you've got 3 EQ settings. You've got the body and filter, which is basically bottom end and treble, and then the boost, which is how much signal's pushing into the fuzz. which is awesome. Also, this works just as well after a buffer as it does before. Because I'm using 3 guitars, which I'll get into, I generally have a buffer turned on at the beginning of the signal chain. We'll get into how the G3 deals with that in a minute. This sits before the buffer because it's germanium, and this will sit after, but it sounds fantastic with the buffer going into it, no matter what guitar I'm using. So there we go. The fuzz will be next in the chain. After the fuzz, I have an SP compressor. I use compression modestly on these gigs that I'm doing, but I do want to have it there. There's a couple of tunes. We're doing FM by Steely Dan that has this beautiful, clean, compressed guitar at the start. Really needed a compressor. So this is the one I've settled on for reasons that will become obvious soon. After that, we have, surprise, surprise, the Brothers. As you probably know, Chase Bliss and Analog Man got together and did this version of the King of Tone, which is the Chase Bliss format, you know, all MIDI, all singing, all dancing, but I only really use this for one sound, which is that King of Tone thing that I love. Now, because I only use it for one sound, I could have gone with this. However, space on the pedal board is at a premium, but also there's something about this with the amps that I've chosen that I really dig. It's not quite as mid-forward, and that really works in this format. So that's the next gain stage. So this is the Reeve from Kingsley. The reason I've got this and not my Harlot is because I had 2 Harlots. Both have been put on some other people's pedal boards because I needed to get a Harlot on them and didn't have time to get another one. But this is the same format. It does a very similar job. I may or may not swap this out with another Harlot when I get mine, but in all honesty, it sounds astonishing. This does a majority of the higher gain settings, but there's something about the Kingsley stuff, even with the higher gain, it is still very articulate, and I love that. It also has a more foot switch on here, and that gives you more gain, but that more foot switch is also remotely controllable using one of the remote switches in G3. Again, we will get into that. That really is the end of the gain stages. Next, you may have seen on the show recently that I was looking for a phaser. A lot of the tunes we're doing in this band, well, all the tunes are from the 70s, and there's a lot of phaser in those tunes. So I really just wanted one phaser that I could just kick on and would just sound great. It came down to these two, and I've actually ended up going with the old 45. Fits perfectly on the board, and sonically there's something about it that I don't know, just sits in a really great place for me. I could have easily gone with either one, and there's a couple of sounds on here that I really dig, but I think for the 45 just seems to work. There's a couple of sounds I use where the 45 goes into everything, a couple of sounds I use where the phaser is only on one amplifier, and we'll get into that in a little bit, but that's the one I've gone with. 2 other modulation pedals that are super important to me. So this is the new Dom Vibrato. I have been using the old one forever, and the way I would do it is I would have vibrato on one side and the other side would be direct, and you get that amazing almost JC120 stereo chorus where vibrato on one side, direct on the other, and it just sounds massive and lush. My favorite pedal to do that was the original Diamond Vibrato. This is the new version, and I absolutely love it. A couple of things. You have the level, speed, depth, which is all in the original. You've got the chorus, which is like a blend control, which enables you to blend some of the original signal in. I might blend a hair of the original signal, but generally it's, you know, left completely wet, so all you get is the vibrato. But then we have a 3-position switch as well. You've got the original sound of the original vibrato, which is really quite warm, which I really dig, but also in the center, it's much brighter, which is fantastic. One issue using the vibrato in wet dry, the original was it is very warm. So you get all your clarity from the dry side, and as massive as it sounds, you could lose a little bit of definition. The center position of the new one puts it all back. But also, you've got a press and hold feature here where the speed is doubled, and it gives you almost faux Leslie type tones. Again, I only ever use this wet dry. The smaller size works really well. The other pedal, which is of course very important to me, is the Redwing. So the Redwing is a true stereo flanger. I only use it in mono because I use wet dry. But what I will do sometimes, I might have the vibrato on one side and the flanger on the other. But man, I could not be without this. I absolutely love it. The modulation effects that I use are a huge part of my sound. If I was only using them sparingly from time to time, I'd be very happy just to stick it in a, you know, little all-seeing, all-dancing unit, and that would be great. But because modulation is so important to me, you know, I've spent a lot of time going through and just finding the sounds that I really connect with, and this is them. But I absolutely do have the old H9 on my board. So why do I have a H9 on my board? Specifically, I use this to do harmonies. There's a couple of tunes I stick this on. I think we're doing Hold the Line by Toto. And it's just a phrase at the end of that solo where it has this really amazing harmony section. I kick this on and it's great. But also a Swiss Army knife. So, you know, there'll be sounds that every now and then, just something very specific that I just want to be able to kick on. So next we have the red Panda Tensor. I had this on my board a couple of years ago and I took it off because I wasn't using it that much, but man, I realized that I missed it because this does something, it's like a simulation of a tape machine that allows you to do sound on sound and, you know, a bunch of things. I can build up sounds with this and then like slow the tape down. It's a really fantastic sounding thing. There are moments when I need to create soundscapes and, you know, just make some noise. And this does that in such a special way. I absolutely love this thing. So that's going on the board as well. And then we get to the delay section of the board. First delay in the chain is my old Ibanez AD9 analog delay, specifically for a slapback. Now, one of the early shows that we did in the first year, we did some tips on soloing and sounds for, you know, solo tones. One of those tips was having a slapback. So what it enables you to do is, without having to have a massive solo boost, a slapback, that doubling thing, it just projects the note a little bit more. And you know, I've had this since the 90s. I adore this pedal. So, you know, I did a little shootout with a whole bunch of analog delays, and this is amazing. I love it. But as far as the all-seeing, all-dancing delay, I have gone back to Timeline. I had a really interesting experience with the Timeline when I was building a pedalboard for Robin Ford. What I discovered was there was two things. One, Strymon got so much right with this pedal when they released it. First being the analog drive-through nature of it. And you can hear when I turn it on and turn it off, if I bypass it out of the loop, there is so little coloration on the direct signal. And that's what I want. I don't want loads of coloration from the pedal itself. Certainly on the wet signal, but you know, when I kick on the delay, I don't want to hear my core tone change. The Timeline is amazing at that. And I think this is the most important thing with this delay for me, is I really know how to use it. I've been using it so long that I can whip up sounds. I know how to get to sounds really quickly. I did think about using this because I think it sounds extraordinary. But I worked out that for what I need, actually, this sounds amazing, but I can, you know, in the middle of a gig, I can actually get into this and adjust things like really quickly. Okay, and finally, they all plug into the GigRig G3S.
Shameless GigRig plug.
This enables me to do all the things I need to do with it. It sends out MIDI for the H9 and for the Timeline. It enables me to do the wet dry thing, so I can split and send some effects to one amp and not the others. Built-in tuner, you know, gets rid of all the stuff out of my signal chain that I'm not using, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, this is at the heart of the pedalboard. So let's talk about the pedalboard.
Shameless GigRig plug.
For the last few years, I've been working on a range of pedalboards that we released earlier this year. The pedalboard that I've gone with is what I call the large single. Now, originally, I was using a large double, which is a large pedalboard with a double tier. So this is my old pedalboard here, and extraordinary sounding thing. Loved it to bits. The reason I have gone to a single tier board, I'm very aware that the venues I want to play, they're not going to be massive venues. I want to have all the sounds that I need to have, but I want to be as compact as I can. Okay, so that's the pedals, that's the pedalboard, power supply, surprise, surprise, GenX14.
Shameless GigRig plug.
There are reasons, and we'll get into it as we build it. What else do we have? I have the little 5 and 5 out patch bay, the Synco, which will go on the side. It will give me my input for my guitar, 2 outputs for my 2 amplifiers, but it'll also give me an input for an expression pedal and an output that will go to the reverb that sits off the board. And here it is. This is the Carl Martin Headroom. This is a spring reverb, but it has 2 presets. So I can have, you know, a preset that's got loads of reverb, another one that's just very subtle, but it also has a remote select switch. So I can control via G3 whether the reverb is on or which reverb it selects. This will sit off the board because I may not use it. I may go straight out into the amplifier, but anyway, that's that. Now, having that remote switch output from the Synco will also enable me to hook up my EchoFix tape delay. You know, should I decide that I really want to have a tape delay in the signal, so then I can just hook that up and use the tape delay as part of a preset, you know, turn it on and off, etc. Finally, we'll have a look at the patch cables. I will be using the Evidence Audio screw-in solderless patch cables for this build. Why am I not soldering them? I really like these cables. I think they sound fantastic, but also I've been building them so long that I can build these cables so that they are really reliable. The other thing is I need this board finished by the end of the day because I've got rehearsal and I need everything set up ready to go. Okay, it is time to play Pedalboard Tetris. So you can see here, I've got the switcher at the front and some foot switches that I need to be able to get to here. So I can fit the Vibrato and the Tensor next to the switcher on this board. Things that I will set and forget: analog delay, phase 45, the Brothers AM. Now, obviously this is programmable, so if I get to a point where I want to program some different sounds in this, I will just run MIDI to it, and that will happily sit back there. SP Compressor, DevTech Audio, DSOTM Fuzz, and my Keeley Java Boost. So they all sit at the back like this. Foot switches I need to get to there. One other thing about this board is I can actually take the tier off the top, which will, when I'm putting it together, that will help with the wiring, etc. But you can see here, I can get to these foot switches here. Now, of course, I can control this with MIDI, but a lot of the times it's easier if I can get to these foot switches. I can, just do what I need to do from the unit. So, if I want a quick tap tempo and I haven't set it up under a foot switch here, it's right there. I think that is a great layout. Okay, what we'll do with the power as well, I hear you all shouting, what about the power? The GenX14 actually fits underneath here. It's as if we designed it to do so. And the main PSU sits at the side here, so plug in one power cord and everything is good. So that's all on there. End of the night. Bang this on. There's the lid. Happy days. Just want to show you something really quickly. This is what I'm going to use to attach the pedals to the pedalboard. Normally, I would use pedalboard tape, this 3M dual lock stuff. Now, it's really great. But what I'm going to be using for this build is this. It's a max strength gel tape. It's a double-sided gel tape. So all you do is, you cut the piece to length, put it on the bottom of the pedal, take the other side off, stick it down. What I like about this, it's really strong enough to build touring rigs. The pedals are locked down, but it's not impossible to move the pedal. I think especially for the rigs where you are decided on the pedals that you're going to use, I think this is brilliant. Also, if you ever do move it, you can remove it from the pedal and from the base of the pedalboard without leaving mess. So yeah, that's what I'll be using for this build. I just thought I'd show you this. I was talking about the Treble Booster, and this is an old germanium OC44 transistor. It doesn't sound very good with a buffer going into it. It wants to see the guitar. But I do want to have the buffer engaged on G3. Now the buffer is in this little pre-gain circuit just here. That sits after the input before the loops. But you'll see underneath the input, I've got this auxiliary loop here. So all I do, it's a TRS connector, TRS to 2 1/4" jacks here. So I plug that into the auxiliary loop. The tip goes to the send, the ring goes to the return. So now, when I engage that loop by using the auxiliary button here, so of course I can have that part of a preset, engage it via a preset on G3, but it means that this will sit before the buffer. Now, the buffer after it sounds great, but it just doesn't want to see a buffer before it. So that's how I get around that little conundrum. This is why I've gone with the SP compressor. I've managed to get everything in, but it is so tight that to make the SP compressor work, I've had to use a little soldered cable that is like 2 mil narrower than the SIS cable. What that means is, with the compressor there, oh, come on, man, it's so tight. There we go. Right, so that's how it will look. But I literally do not have a millimeter to spare. But that's part of the process, because I've set myself the limit. This is the size. I don't want to go any bigger. I need to get everything on here. On every board build that you do, you will come across problems like this, and you just have to find a way around it. Now, one thing I have done is I've put in the audio first. Normally, I do the power first, but because things are so tight, I wanted to make sure I could run the audio, but I've left enough space with the pedals to be able to run power to the pedals without too much drama. Okay, so I'll stick down these last few, and then we'll get the top tier on with the power and those pedals and get it all connected. Right, that is the bottom row all done. So you can see, I mean, it's so tight in here, but that's the deal. We, oh, look, here comes a little head. So, but part of the, I wanted to make this, I've limited myself to this size, and I've managed to get it all to fit. And actually, I think it looks fantastic. So if we have a look from the front, let me just swing this around if I can. You can see I've got access to the tensor, I've got access to the doubling speed of the foot switch, but I've managed to plumb in the 2 outputs, an expression and the remote switch out from G3 back to the Synco input to the input. I've got the Java boost in the auxiliary loop here. All of these are plumbed in. So now what I want to do is get the top tier on. I'll show you what that's going to look like. So that's the top tier there. We'll have timeline here. H9 next to that. MIDI out of G3 into the timeline, into the H9. Next to that we'll have Redwing, and then my Kingsley. Make sure it's all lined up beautifully. I mean, I could have put the Redwing underneath, but it's so gorgeous. I do love how this looks, and this is just fantastic. Okay, time to plumb these in, run the power, and then away we go. Okay, everything's wired in. I've got the power supply is running to everything. I'll just quickly show you how this works. So I've got the power cable going from the G3. It's coming up here through this loom as it gets to this output here. So these are all my outputs, and you see these little tabs what I do with this is that I run the cable to the tab, then I cut it to length like this. The cable that has the white stripe goes underneath the white tab, and the cable that has the black stripe goes underneath the black tab. I push the tabs closed, so with the end of my pliers, you hear that click in. So what's happening there is it's locking the cable in place and connecting it into the circuit. So now, with any luck, if I take my power cable, there we go. We have power to everything. Fantastic. Okay, here it is. And on the fourth day, beautiful. There we go. Now, one thing, no pedalboard is complete without a pick 10, but I literally, there is nowhere to put it on top. So I think what I'm going to do is just put it over here, on top of the Synco. Let's see, so just there like that. I think that's a good place for it. I must say, it's a beautiful board. It really is. I am so pleased with that. Can get to everything. The only thing that I need to get to on a power up, this doesn't power up automatically. I could mod it so it does that, but I'm not touching this thing. But man, I love that. Wow, it's just gorgeous. Right, let's go and hear some sounds. Okay, so here it is. Everything's working, everything's powered up and dialed in. So the purpose of this board is actually to do a gig and to with this new band. So what's been really interesting is going through the songs and working out the sounds that I need. But at the same time, I want them to be sounds that I could just turn up with this board and do anything. So yes, there are some specific sounds for specific songs, and using MIDI and presets, I'll have them all set up ready to go. But I would be able to just carry this into any gig, plug in, and away we go. So the amplifiers that I have settled on are my old Vox AC10 Twin. Now that amp is from 1959. It has a couple of Weber Alnico 10-inch speakers in it because the original speakers were just destroyed. And then we have the Princeton Reverb. It's just it's not hand wired or anything. It's just a standard Princeton Reverb, but it does have an EV10M. An EV10M 10-inch that, you know, everyone knows the EV12M. Well, that has the 10-inch, which is apparently a very difficult speaker to find. And we have a couple of friends out there who found this speaker and sent it to Mick, and we've stuck it in the Princeton, and I think it sounds absolutely incredible. So let's have a quick listen. This is the Princeton. It has quite a lot of reverb in there, but I dig that. It's a beautiful reverb. Now this is the Vox. It really is an astonishing sounding amplifier. Now, the way that I have, there's no reverb in that amplifier, obviously, but you'll see at the back of the board, I've got the Headroom. Now that is connected using the remote switches in G3, so I can turn the Headroom on, but only going to that amplifier. So here it is without any reverb, and here it is turning the Headroom on. So it's really interesting when you hear both amplifiers on, without the reverb in the Vox, we get this. Put the reverb on the Vox. I think these amps sound incredible together, but they are doing so at a much lower volume than I would normally play at. It still sounds massive and fat, and I'm connecting, really pleased with it. Having a couple of amplifiers, lower wattage amplifiers, but still turned up and still sounding good, works really, really well. Then we look at the gain stages. So on here I've got a treble booster, a compressor, a fuzz, and 2 overdrive pedals. So 5 gain stages. So let's look at lowest to highest gain. Well, let's have a look at the compressor. So under the hood, we've got this SP compressor by Exotic. I use it for things like, you know, on top of a clean sound. Sounds great if I play that without the compressor. And I can stick that on top of gain sounds as well, just to give it a little bit more sustain. It's a really great compressor in such a small package. I really dig it. The next lowest level, we've got the Brothers in here, and I'm just using one side of the Brothers. I can use MIDI with it and engage the treble booster in it, and you know, all that stuff. And it's a really wonderful sounding thing. But for the moment, I'm just using it for a lower gain sound, which is what I've always used my King of Tone for. So again, clean tone. I then go from the King of Tone to the Reeve. So this is a pedal from Kingsley. It's a valve overdrive, and it has more gain, but it's actually not a million miles away from the King of Tone. So if we hear the King of Tone when I'm hitting it a bit harder, then put the Reeve on, I love how this thing sounds into these two amplifiers. So it's basically the next level of gain on from the King of Tone. I shouldn't call it the King of Tone, it's the Brothers AM. So the next level of gain on from the Brothers. It does have a more switch on it, which enables me to kick on some more gain if I want it. Yeah, really, really wonderful sounding thing. The next I've got the Fuzz. So this was a surprise to me. This is the Fuzz that Joe at Hello Sailor gave to me from DevTech Audio in Australia. The DSOTM, the Dark Side of the Moon Fuzz. Really cool thing. You'll see the LED here, and it changes to all the colors of the rainbow. But it's a really fabulous sounding fuzz. And I will actually use that on top of other overdrives. So, you know, I don't have it too fuzzy, but there are moments when it will sit on top of the Reeve. So, it's really great. It's really great. Then we have my old Keeley Java Boost, which is the Treble Booster. And I will use that going into both the Brothers and the Reeve. So if we hear the Reeve, so you can see I don't have the level really high, but just boosting into the gain stages sounds great. If you hear it in the clean side, you hear all the mids it's adding, which is really what it's amazing at. So that's all the gain stages, but I do stack them. So for example, you know, with the Reeve, I can put the compressor into the Reeve. So that's the gain stages. I am using some different guitars. So for example, so for some of the the rockier numbers and for some of the Steely Dan numbers, this is the one that I'm using. And we hear that with the Reeve. So this is the other guitar that I'm using. This is the Johnny Marr Jag, and it just has a thing about it. It was really beautiful. So the really cool thing about these guitars is I don't need to make any adjustments on the board. I've set them up so that I can just grab the guitars and plug them in and away we go. Okay, so they're the gain stages. And then now let's have a look at some of the other sounds we've got. The Diamond Vibrato has been a very important pedal to me for a long time. I've used the big box original version forever. Diamond have come out with the smaller versions, and this vibrato sounds amazing. It also enables you to go a little bit brighter than the original, which I love, because the original, as cool as it is, could just get a little bit dark. But anyway, if we hear the vibrato by itself, I mean, it's a cool sound, but if I do the same sound and I split the vibrato into one amplifier, so here's it without the vibrato. Man, it's so cool. So same idea, slightly different context. If we have listened to a heavier tone, like with the Reeve pedal, and then same thing, I split the signal, send it through the vibrato on one side. So I love that space it gives. It just sounds so massive. Phaser, I have the MXR 45 underneath the bridge. So if we hear the guitar, this is going into the brothers, and then I'm going to put that into the phaser. It sounds like this. And it's a fantastic sound, but what I want to do is only send the phaser to one amplifier. Actually, if I add a little bit of slapback onto that, Fabulous. So being able to have the phaser either go into both amplifiers when I want a really over-the-top phasing sound, or just split it so that I get the character of phaser into one amp, but it still sounds full and rich, is great. And of course, Flanger is of course a really massive thing for me. And I'll show you how I use it. It's especially good with solo tones. So let's just get a sound up. And that's a really beautiful chimey sound, but I'm going to stick the flanger on top of that. Again, I'm only going to set it to 1 amp. So that's my 3 main modulation sounds. Let's have a look at the timeline. So I've got 4 basic delay sounds. The first, and probably the one I use the most, is an Andy Timmons type delay. So it's a dotted 8. It is stereo, so it's a quarter note on one side, dotted 8 on the other. So and one thing I will do is with an expression pedal, I'll be able to control the delay level, but really I'll set that and forget it. It sounds fantastic. The other delay sound is for a specific song, and we get this sort of a thing happening. Like a really long delay, and it's just ping-ponging between the 2 different amplifiers. And then all I do is go back to the Andy Timmons sound. The other sound I'm using is a ducking delay. There's a really great solo in Hold the Line by Toto. Steve Lukather, oh my goodness. There's actually learning a couple of songs of his and really getting deep into what he does. Man alive, what a very special guitar player. Now, it's very interesting with the ducking delay on the timeline. I had used that a little bit, but going into it, man, it works great, and does that 2290 thing where it uses the envelope of the note to control the delay level. And if I'm playing something, I can control how far back the delay is so that the delay doesn't get on top of the solo sample. When I stop playing, the delay goes back up. So I'll show you what I mean. So if I'm here, with the ducking delay, So that's how he does it. You'll hear in the solo when he stops and the delay comes back. So he's using a ducking delay. And this, you know, the timeline does that so great. I'll quickly show you as well at the end of that solo what I use the H9 for. The H9's a Swiss Army knife for me. It's just for little things here and there, but it does do a passable harmony. And, you know, if you can't have a second guitar player in the band who can do the harmony bits, like at the end of that Hold the Line solo, you've got... Yeah, so that combined with a ducking delay, it's, you know, the timeline, awesome. And the other delay sound that I use it for as well is this smear thing, which I've always loved. Just to hear a couple of my fave combinations. I think that's everything. Yeah, I am so pleased with how this has worked out. I may or may not use the headroom. It doesn't really need it. If we're squeezed for space, we'll see. I mean, there are times with that clean sound when it is nice to have a bit of reverb in the Vox, but it just sounds so great without it, just on its own. We'll see. But the only other thing I haven't shown you is the tensor and how I use that. The tensors are like a little looper that I just use for little moments. there we go. My new pedal board for this year. I hope you enjoyed that. Again, please subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. Massive thank you to our patrons on Patreon and to our preferred retailers. All the details in the description below. If you have any questions about this, just leave a comment and I'll get back to you. All right. Cheers, guys. Bye.